what would you like to discuss today?
Please someone to save me. I can't find myself. I'm totally lost.
You are feeling frisky today. Testing. 1, 2, 3. I love you. A bushel and a peck. A bushel and a peck. And a hug around the neck. What are you debating on doing?
Hello, and welcome to the Two Joints podcast, where, during our morning sesh, we discuss walking the paths of committed partnership, child-led parenting, healing and spiritual guideship, and creating an off-grid sustainable home in the jungle of Mexico. Roll one up, smoke 'em if you got 'em, and settle in for our extended safety meeting, strategizing divesting from capitalism and community building, with mutual respect for oneness and individuation.
In our third episode of Two Joints podcast, my beautiful wife opens all of her integration boxes and shares how she came to develop the Harmonized Embodied Transformation approach, which is a synergy of polyvagal theory, the body deva method, and nonviolent communication. How about we talk about body consciousness
Okay.
work?
My heart flutters.
What about them apples?
So you want to talk about Mary Chatan's emotional body consciousness work, body-led self-inquiry meditation. Can we talk about that and talk about all of it, polyvagal and nonviolent communication?
Yeah, it all kind of fits together.
HETA, Harmonized, Embodied Transformation Approach. Fancy, huh? Do you like that? Do you like that name?
I do.
I'm not sure. It's warming up. When I came up with it, I didn't like it. I've been on a search for something else, but it's been warming up to me. I really like what HETA means in a couple different languages.
Yeah,
the name
cool
has some beautiful meanings about love and kind of the representation of the harmonized embodied transformation approach, sort of the end result. So I do really like that.
I'm cool with that. I like it, actually.
How should we get started talking about it?
First, I would like to put a disclaimer or a warning in our podcast.
A warning?
A warning.
Warning.
Of we are in a soundproof studio, and we have brought in the birds and the trucks and the trees as an added bonus to our podcast.
So your warning is that we've received some really beautiful feedback, which means people are listening.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
But that our sound quality is concerning, difficult.
People do not like the birds.
Stop that. People do not like that they have trouble hearing us because they want to hear
us.
Us.
And not the birds.
Stop that.
But the birds are an added bonus in our studio of love.
So we're going to try to keep the birds and talk a little bit louder. And we have some friends that are going to be helping us with improved mic quality and things like that.
We have magical friends who have magical tools that are going to set us up more for a little bit more success.
But for now,
I had to put a disclaimer or a warning in our podcast.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Anyway, sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
So first off, how did you find Mary Chatan Mueller's work?
Okay. Mary Mueller Chatan's
work. Mare.
Mare. You call her Mare.
Oh, Mare.
She'll probably die.
I've never met Mare. I don't know Mare, but we're close.
Mare is an angel on earth that I have not met personally. I have just had the privilege to read all of her books, many of her blogs, work with her online in multiple forms, and I found her. Oh, well, what's the math? When did I have my first
breakdown?
When did I have my first entheogenic psychedelic beyond cannabis experience? That was 2016.
Yeah, close. You know me and dates.
I know,
I'd
you're
really
really
have to
off,
sit down and write it off.
Mm-hmm.
Around that time,
It was
yes.
right-
I can support 2016-ish.
It was right after we sold the cafe.
Yeah.
And I think that was about 2016.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember the evening that I found Mary Chatan online. And we were with your Auntie Jan. So that was 2018. New Year's.
Yeah, New Year's.
And between 2016 and 2018, we had started to use psychedelics and entheogens for me to try to work through some of my post-traumatic stress disorder complex, PTSD, depression, and general mental health.
Yeah.
We and
did
physical.
Change direction of the boat.
We shifted the direction of the boat. The boat was sinking.
The boat.
The Abbey mental health boat was sinking.
Yeah, it was.
And it was super successful in shifting the boat. But I feel like maybe let's just keep going with the metaphor. The boat took me out to open waters, uncharted territory for me.
The entheogenic work.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
I had no idea what was going on. And I knew that I wasn't experiencing the same types of perceived negative mental health loop patterns to the degree I had previously and for the lengths that I had previously because of introducing entheogenics.
Yeah.
And I also knew that I was starting to experience a variety of aspects of my own mind, my own body, and what I guess I would call the normally unconscious layers of perception in the universe that I couldn't really wrap my brain around, and it was negatively impacting my body. So we had done a bunch of things. We had switched our diets, and I had been doing an intuitive meditation, an intuitive like yoga stretching kind of thing. I had a very chronic pain thing happening, and I was feeling so much better between 2016 and 2018. I was feeling so much better overall, mentally, physically, emotionally, but I had this very particular chronic pain that was severe. It was what I now know multiple years later, it has a super fancy name, and maybe I'll link it in the comments, but I had a couple different nerves in my pelvic floor that were activated and inflamed because of my IBS.
Firing.
That were firing to the point that it felt like I had a hot poker constantly poking me in the ass, quite honestly, all day, every day. And it was excruciating. It was mind-boggling. And now, after researching it and understanding it, I've discovered people online that say that it made them lose their jobs. It made them suicidal. Like I finally found some validation.
You were in a bad place.
Yeah.
It was a rough.
Yeah, so
I was scared.
it was odd. I was like mentally better. Like overall, like I was mentally better. I was physically better on a variety of levels. Got the gut stuff, the IBS flare down and all of that. But I had this particular chronic pain that was just beyond me. And with all of that, our shift in life, selling our cafe, moving, bringing on alternative diet lifestyle changes, practicing this really interesting intuitive yoga. I was never a yoga person, but I started to find myself really finding relief with this pain through intuitive yoga movements. I started having these experiences that were really difficult for me to explain. And it involved how I perceived myself in the world. It involved how I perceived the world view. And it involved how I perceived you. There was a variety of sort of religious, archetypical overtones and undertones to the way in which I was sort of interfacing with reality. And throughout that whole time, I was functioning. We were launching our first cannabis business, and I was functioning on like all cylinders from a getting things done, from a parenting standpoint and from a business standpoint and all of that. But I was also dealing with this really interesting set of side effects from long-term chronic post-traumatic stress disorder, this new long-term chronic pain, and then this introduction of entheogenics. So sometime right after New Year's 2018, in the middle of the night, I sat at the countertop of Auntie Jan's kitchen, and I put in all of my mental, physical, emotional, what I now call spiritual, but at the time I thought like crazy aspects of myself, and followed it with what the fuck is wrong with me. And on the second page of Google popped up Mary Chatan's website or blog, and I hit on it and I started reading her blogs, and it felt like a version of me that had gone through many of the same aspects of what I had gone through and had a deeper understanding of what it was and how to deal with it, was talking to me. So for a long time, I just sat with her blogs and read, and it really just gave me a bunch of validation and a bunch of hope that there was a way through this. And then eventually I worked with, she wasn't taking clients at the time, so eventually I worked with someone that, a woman, Jeannie, who was trained in her methods. And I did some of these Body Deva sessions. And then eventually I read her book, The Body Deva, and I started reading some of her other books. And then I started working more with myself on a disciplined Body Deva practice. I started introducing aspects of it into my compassionate care work because I saw that it was really working for me. So when people were coming to me for compassionate care work, I started introducing aspects of this. And then eventually I took online courses and worked directly with Mary online, and then became certified in the Body Deva practice. That's the chunk of that. After this long period of time in working with the Body Deva practices, which is a body-led self-inquiry meditation. There's multiple forms of meditation, and self-inquiry meditation is one of them. And this is an active form of meditation where we are identifying in the body, and that's the key component, always through the body, areas of stuckness. And so we find those areas via pain and tension in the body. We find those areas through where we can feel emotional states in the body. We find those areas where there's absences and fuzziness, and we feel completely disconnected from our body, we always go through the body. And from going through the body, we sit with what that feels like in the body and really spend a lot of time honoring the feeling and describing the feeling and having a expansive, fully attentive, fully awareness of how energy, oftentimes stuck trauma, then I've become to realize ancestral energies, past life energies, things like that are stuck in our body, and or we have disassociated to the extent that they're maybe in the outer aura of our body because something has happened that was too much for our body to deal with. The way that I describe this, people that have read The Body Keeps the Score or are familiar with somatic experiencing, aspects of those are similar to body deva work. Mary can speak way more eloquently to why and how she sees her work similarly and differently. But the best way I can describe it to people is often through the gut healing work and the detoxification work I do. So when we experience toxicity in the body through food or environmental inputs, our body handles it in a couple different ways. And one of the ways our body handles it is by expelling it from our body. And another way that our body handles it is actually by essentially putting it into our adipose, our fat tissue, and encapsulating it and protecting us from it. So when we experience forms of physical abuse or mental emotional abuse, or essentially any kind of act of traumatic conditioning that invalidates our whole true self, our body responds to that as it is essentially like a toxin. And it, in order to keep us safe, sort of like compartmentalizes it and stores it in our body and takes it offline from our awareness in order to survive that experience at the time. And if we don't process that properly, and or it actually can kind of like push it to the outer energetic field that we have sometimes. And what I realized is because of my early sexual abuse, it really disassociates you from your body in a really intense sort of way. So so we have all of these things that have happened to us from now through our childhood, through pre-verbal where we can't even remember it, to in utero experiences, and then through essentially our genetic lineage, ancestral and past life aspects that live in us and have a consciousness. They have their own existence alongside of us, and they affect the way that we are engaging with the world, the way that we are essentially reacting to our present experiences. They have a messaging of their own. So we have a mental consciousness, we have this body consciousness, and usually in cases of complex post-traumatic stress and significant disassociation from the body, we are not, the mind and the body are not communicating. Our mind is a supercomputer that is this beautiful, brilliant tool of the body. That's something important that I've discovered is our mind and our consciousness that is associated with our mind isn't separate. It is from our body, it's part of our body, it's the wholeness. And it has its own consciousness. It has, one of the things I was thinking about instead of HETA is naming this something like polydeva, polyconscious, multiple consciousnesses, because it's really navigating the mental consciousness and these body consciousnesses and bringing them together. So I have often described the way our mental consciousness works is like a supercomputer of pros and cons of how to keep us alive and functioning. It is this tuck, 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 constantly trying to assess through like a mental capacity what we need to do to survive. Because of, I think, multiple generations and, I mean, I don't know, thousands of years at this point of fear-based conditioning, our mind consciousness, that algorithmic tuck, 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 tucking pros and cons, has really started to veer into a negative fear-based processing system. And so we have these minds that are really a little bit out of control on the like off the rails fear-based consciousness. So that's something that we have to start to kind of really realize. And the way that I realized that is through my body, where I was then sitting with these areas of chronic pain or these areas where I could feel and sense strong emotions being held. And I was doing the body deva work, which is feeling into it, identifying how much of it is mine, how much of it is outside of me, someone else's, yours, how much of it I'm hanging on for you, my family, my society. What is attached to that from an emotional standpoint? And then where that comes from, following that sort of self-inquiry line to how old is it? Is it a 12-year-old me? Is it a 6-year-old me? And then what does that 12-year-old, 6-year-old me stuck inside of me, having that particular emotion and response to a present day situation, have to say and need? And through processing that, I really saw how the mental stories that I held, the knowing up here, I knew I could name my traumas. I could name all the reason I was fucked up. So where was the knowing here and the knowing here, or the knowing through my heart space, different? Where did that story shift and change? And what I realized is by filtering everything through our body, going in and really understanding the messaging and the needs, and coming through that heart space, that compassionate space of both myself in those situations and other people in those situations, I was able to release a variety of stuck, I am able to release a variety of stuck physical energy, mental, emotional energy, and now what I kind of realize is spiritual energy. And it never has made me go, oh, it's okay that I experienced that sexual trauma. That was okay. And like, it's never, but it has made me relate to those things in a way, not even also a way I don't like, where it's like, oh, I had to go through that to be here now. It's hard to explain until I completely guide someone through the practice. It informs my present reality. It isn't about excusing the past. It isn't about saying the past happened for a reason. It informs my present reality and how I'm engaging with my present reality tied to that past in a way that helps me realize how it's not serving me right now. And by processing that and getting unstuck from that and coming to terms with that, I can have a lot of compassion for myself, that whatever the thing I endured, I was doing the best that I could. And really the compassionate thing is that other people were probably doing the best that they could as well. And likely someone that harmed me was doing so because of a series of complex traumas and conditionings on their part. And there is this just cascading realization that we are constantly engaging with people in a sort of what I call complex post-traumatic stress world. And that was really empowering for me to find this tool to release this stuckness and to come to terms with things that had happened to me in the past and to see how they were informing my present reality.
Yeah.
And to then shift from those things and to set manageable goals for what I needed now via what that 6-year-old needed then that is asking me to still address now. And that's kind of the gist of the Body Deva work. And I solely focused on the Body Deva work as the integration tool for the entheogenic experiences and for what was coming up in finally dealing with my complex post-traumatic stress via the Body Deva method for a very, very long time, probably up until the last 2 years or so. And I still use that as the I would say probably like the 50% of the integration work for me is the Body Deva work. And then what happened a couple years ago was I started to realize that there were aspects of the Body Deva work that fully didn't resonate with me. And or I was missing something. Like I could just intuitively sense it. Either there was aspects that didn't resonate, and that's okay. You don't have to fully drink the Kool-Aid of any methodology. And so I realized some stuff was missing for me, and I then further investigated into working with Mary to figure out how I wasn't understanding and applying the approach in order to have aha moments of, oh, it wasn't resonating because I hadn't embodied certain aspects of the approach yet. And then there was also investigating what else was out there in that sphere to fit some gaps of things that weren't resonating. And one of the areas that just was not flowing was when I was starting to apply this with other people. People are more resistant to doing Body Deva work, to going into their bodies and knowing not through here, but through here, than anything I've ever experienced. More resistant than trying to help people get comfortable with cannabis medicine. More resistant than helping people with entheogenics. More resistant than breath work and intuitive movement and diet. Out of all of my tools, it is the most important tool that I have for navigating this world. And it is the most difficult one that I can try to convey to others that it's essential.
Essential and important. Yeah.
So I was trying to figure out what was going on with that. And we had a client, we had an in-house client that was one of the probably most emergency state mental health clients that we had had. And in the first 3 to 4 days of working with the client, I wasn't getting very far. And I was very nervous of whether all of our tools were going to be successful.
Help.
And I hit the internet, and I don't have as exacting understanding of where I came across polyvagal and Deb Dana specifically, but I came across Deb Dana and polyvagal theory, and it all started to make sense for me of why we are so resistant to our bodies. And when I understood how we are activated with a fight, flight, freeze, fawn central nervous system response. And when I understood how our body is activated into these responses, these essential fear responses of I am not safe right now, in the same way of a big trauma to little traumas, or to even everyday situations that shouldn't be traumatic.
Conversations,
people,
any interactions, anything.
That is making a person essentially activated into this feeling of they are not safe is the same whether it's a big thing or a little thing, essentially. And so what I realized is this particular client, and then I had aha moments understanding sort of everyone I was engaging with, and then really putting that mirror to myself and realizing no matter this work that I had done, to the degree I felt I was doing like a really good job on my path, how much I was constantly in an activated central nervous system response of feeling fundamentally unsafe in this world and fundamentally unsafe in my body. And so with Dana, who really started to focus originally on practitioners co-regulating other people into safety, I utilized her brilliant tools, her very, something I like about Mary's tools is they are obnoxiously simple. So part of why people don't believe it works is because it's so simple.
And it's yourself. It's not somebody else or a doctor or
nobody is telling you anything except for yourself.
It's yourself in your body.
Yeah. But in order to kind of be willing to see that and do that work, you have to feel safe.
Feel safe, yeah. If you don't feel safe, you're not going to do the deep dive.
No. And absolutely. So I really it was immediate, this realization of polyvagal theory and Deb Data's practices. And I started working on simply co-regulating clients before doing body deva work, before introducing compassionate care suggestions.
It's almost the number one. That co-regulation.
Yeah.
You're safe, I'm safe, we're safe.
Yeah.
And now let's move
forward. And
so
what's cool is
it's really cool.
Is like it goes from when we're able to realize we're not safe, then it's why aren't we safe? And then that goes right into into the body deva work. And so that's where it's starting to come, and Deb and other practitioners are starting to come. But it was interesting at the time where mostly the polyvagal theory was simply the recognition and the science of the central nervous system. So it was really this bridge to Western institutional science of like simply understanding whether we're safe or not. And what I kind of now know is like people, the entire polyvagal is like feeling safe and feeling connected. These core needs that humans have of feeling safe and feeling connected. And so when we don't feel safe, we disconnect. Sometimes when we don't feel safe, we find safety in a way that is a connection, but is kind of like a bypassed safety where it's actually it's not connection that is real true safety. And so there's these really beautiful layers of polyvagal and the idea of safety and the idea of connection. What I know now and what I see is at the time when I was coming to this, there weren't all those tools kind of following the polyvagal world of how to then deal with why don't I feel safe. So then it was easy for me. I went, okay, we have polyvagal and I have body deva, and they are a complete fit for each other. So we address regulation, co-regulation. Do I feel safe? Where am I at in the sort of flight, fight, freeze, autonomic nervous system response? How is that affecting my present moment reality? And how is that affecting my physical energy? How is that affecting my ability to digest food? It was informing all of these aspects that I already was aware of and working with people. And it really, really, really helped. It completely shifted how I engaged with clients, and to the point that I didn't push the previous protocols of healing the way that I did. And I sat back and I really tried to get to know people in a regulated fashion.
Yeah.
And that was an area, I'll be honest, that I didn't feel like the Body Deva and Mary specifically doesn't usually address. She comes from a place of, for the most part, at least, I don't know in her personal practice, waiting for people that are really ready to come work with her. I often have people, I'm not seeking them out, but I attract people that are in those emergency states.
Yeah.
Mary, quite frankly, in her books, talks about, emergency states and gives some advice about what to do. But she's very clear in her books and in her messaging that you don't necessarily do this work when you're in an acute emergency state. And we tend to work with people in acute emergency states.
Yeah.
And so I really had to work outside of Body Deva to figure out what I needed to do first. And that was really regulation.
Co-regulation.
And that was the job of that client's parent at some point in their life, to co-regulate them and to parent them from a regulated parental state. And because of multiple generations that we have now of people living out of regulation,
Unsafe, unregulated,
we have multiple generations of people that never experienced parental co-regulation in order to eventually be able to experience their own adult regulation. And so that was where that part came in. And then I still struggled how to communicate this. I struggled how to communicate what was coming out of the Body Deva sessions about my feelings and my needs and what I needed to do and how I needed to do that. I could do it all. It was a very individualistic the Body Deva work was very individualistic for me, and the outcomes were still very like I-centered. I need to do this. There was not a communal thing. Maybe, yes, it was like, you need to find a community. You need to have more connection. You need to do this. But I was really struggling to communicate that to you. I was struggling to communicate that to others. I was really struggling with the going from, I now knew it here, I now knew it here, but that throat chakra was super stuck, to the point that the chronic pain moved from my pelvic floor to right here. I was just living in this weird stuck body, energy coming up, energy coming down. People that are experiencing Kundalini energy, it's really that idea of you get things flowing, and spaces and places where you have blockages, you start to experience these intense kind of physical pains and sensations, because that energy is so strong. Rising consciousness and evolutionary, us figuring this out so that we don't essentially become extinct, is really strong. Our body energy, our body is really strong in trying to tell us to figure this out so we maintain, we survive, right?
Yeah.
So I was having a lot of throat chakra and just right here, polyvagal, it was all connected, stuff going on. And I really, again, have no idea how I came to, well, actually not again. This time, I don't remember. I don't remember how I came to nonviolent communication. I simply don't. I don't know where I saw it, who I heard it from, but it most certainly was not something I had ever really known or heard about. And I all of a sudden did. I all of a sudden knew I needed to learn about nonviolent communication. It was that simple. And I also knew that I was still deep in my development of Body Deva work. I was still deep in my development of polyvagal work. And in my list of things that I could essentially neurodivergently do a obsessive compulsive deep dive, it wasn't something in the moment that I could devote my time and attention to, but I knew I needed to understand it better. And I was very lucky to find Sarah in San Pancho, who had background as a social worker in nonviolent communication. And we co-hosted a course with about 12 people, and I begged and pleaded and then sort of ironically demanded that our family go. And we learned about nonviolent communication. And part of why I was so set on this is from our family. Yeah. I had learned all of these things, and I had seen how I had been conditioned and how people's unregulated responses and their traumas had caused my unregulated, not caused, but yeah, I guess cause, that's fine to say. You know, it's a cascade of my-ness. And I was seeing how I was playing that out with you, and I was playing that out with my children. And I was devastated every time I failed at the partnering and parenting in a way that I felt like I was causing you or my kids to have to go do a session because I was, you know, sticking traumas places. And especially in the words, especially in how I was speaking as a parent, simply did not align with this new sort of way that I understood the world. And we went through this course, and it was really, really helpful for me. And there was pros and cons to it, and it was definitely like this good moments and horrible moments of applying this, because it's hard. It's hard. And it requires...
Well, it's just new. And anything new isn't easy, so it takes work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
it's an entire... So what I had going for me is the philosophy behind nonviolent communication completely aligns with understanding Body Deva and polyvagal. And that's why, again, so all of a sudden, polyvagal, Body Deva, and nonviolent communication just created this trifecta. This trifecta where they were all using, and Marshall Rosenberg is the nonviolent communication person to name the names. They were all using some of the same language. There was overlapping in worldview, overlapping in philosophy. There was enough overlap in all of these things to have these things fit together perfectly. What I realized with nonviolent communication, through applying it to how we worked with each other and we worked with the kids, is then how quickly it was how I needed to work with clients, because one of the things we had been really, really observing in the peer space of doing guide work was the lack of autonomy to the client, and a lot of like weird gurus putting their worldview onto their clients. And I was hyper sensitive to the point that I almost stopped doing entheogenic Body Deva, any kind of I almost stopped doing client work because I was so afraid to be repeating this putting my shit on other people stuff. And so it really was hard for me, and I quickly saw that the tool of nonviolent communication with clients doesn't allow that. If you really are doing that work, which is discovering your their needs and their feelings and making requests instead of demands. To put like nonviolent communication as simply as possible, it is getting to the core of needs and the core of feelings and realizing that we cannot demand of another.
Yeah.
We need to, fundamentally, because it's a need we have to have choice in this world. We need to be able to respond from understanding our needs and our feelings and feeling like we have a choice. Where I think nonviolent communication is so hard is that we do not have a system, really a good system for talking about complex feelings.
Yep.
And to say, maybe I feel frustrated, but that frustration, when we can break it down and get it down to fear, right? So there's some core feelings, and then there's a body of complex feelings. And really going from the complex feelings we can identify to what is that core feeling, and therefore what is that core need. So I am afraid, I need to feel safe.
Yep.
Right?
Correct.
Would you be willing to, do whatever or help me whatever, or explain yourself
Yep.
in a more clear fashion for me not to feel fear and not feel safe? It's really like that simple.
Yep.
So like these things are super, super simple. However, it's a lot like when I went to graduate school and I got thrown into a postmodern Foucauldian philosophical graduate level world. And it was a totally different language. Or it's a lot like when I got here and I didn't speak Spanish. Yep. It's a different language.
Yeah.
And so until we understand the language of Body Deva and the language of polyvagal and the language of nonviolent communication, it's really, really hard to actually embody it.
Yeah. Well, you don't know. So how do you embody something that you don't
Right.
understand or know?
Exactly. And what I found is the trifecta informed each other in a way where I could help people understand the language and then experience the embodied realizations of these things more quickly, to the point that they could more quickly be willing to do the work.
Yeah.
Period. End of long monologue. So that's like that. So I call it the HETA, Harmonized Embodied Transformation Approach, because the harmony is that idea of being in constant regulation, and the truth is we're always activated.
Always.
Because nature is very activating. And that's what I've discovered is like my worldview is that humans are fundamentally compassionate and good. And they have a need to be compassionate and good, and they want to be compassionate and good. And so I don't actually believe that there are good and bad humans. I do not actually believe that we have to experience suffering and trauma in order to
be happy or be enlightened.
To be enlightened or to be happy or to experience this world. I believe that we've lost our way or we haven't found our way fully. And I don't know. I don't know if there was some like utopian world where we didn't live in this fear and we interacted with people and nature in a way that we were harmonious, and we could go from a natural fear moment like a bear on the path and then process that and then move on back into harmony. I don't know. maybe we never have had that, or maybe we did and we lost it. But I believe we can achieve that. I really do. And I believe that these things are actually our key to achieving that. I do believe that nature is fundamentally traumatizing if we don't figure out a way to embrace that we are part of nature, that there is a naturalness to the perceived scary things that nature can do to us. And maybe that's where we lost our way. Maybe we separated from the harmonious understanding, so that when we experienced death at some point, we lost track of that. And so it became something we were afraid of, instead of something that we honored the feelings and emotions and understood that that was part of the cycle of nature and life. And so my work for myself is to get to that point where I realize that I realize here, and I realize through here, that I am fundamentally a compassionate, good person, that I have never in my life done anything purposefully, maliciously wrong, that I deserve grace and forgiveness, that I can always do better to become more aware of where these past things have allowed me to be in a present moment of activation and disassociation from the compassionate messaging that my body always will give. If you allow your experiences to filter through your heart, if you allow what you say to filter through your heart, you'll never go wrong. I have that faith in our bodies. Our bodies are, and that's, I think I've really started, we talk a lot about the meat suit of the body, and that comes from Mary's work. And I'm not sure it's a meat suit. I believe it is a thinking, feeling, emoting, conscious aspect of ourselves that we have denied, to the point that we don't realize that it is the conduit with which we need to filter versus filtering up here.
Just in the mind. Yeah. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, so that's kind of, my goal is to be this like evangelical voice and evangelical embodiment of that idea of compassion and goodness, and of practicing through actually doing, not just saying I know it here and I can say it here.
Yeah.
But I go down to my toes and I make sure I feel it all the way through. And there's a lot of talk about embodiment, but if you do this work, you cannot bypass. If you truly commit to this work and you truly do this work and you truly go through your body, you cannot bypass. You will start to embody. You will start to do. You will start to live the life that you are saying that you are living. Yeah. And in the current new age woo-woo world that has really gotten questionably super uber bypassed, I think it's super important to be sure that we are walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And so I think that it's obvious to me in how I choose to walk this world right now that I have been significantly impacted by the Body Devo work, in actually starting to really physically actualize the things that I have said are important to me and that I want to do and that I should do, and all of those things. It has come faster. The community center, our own entheogenic sort of container, how I show up as a parent. It doesn't mean that I don't, we talked about it last podcast, fall off the wagon and fall from grace over and over every day. but through being more in tune with my body and being more aware that I'm activated out of safety, and I am activated from a past situation, and I am not in my body, and I am not filtering through my heart, I can come back. I can do that discernment in real time. It used to be that I could only do a body Deva session like every 6 months.
Yep.
And then I had to do 6 months of integrating that into like
Yep.
a new
And
way of me.
Yep.
And now I can just walk through. And there are phases where I get low energy or tired or this or that, and I get off a little bit longer. But those periods of time
are
are
definitely shorter.
Yep.
Yep. In your ability to snap back or to recognize all that and then to communicate that.
Yeah.
Is exponentially faster.
Yeah.
Cool to see.
So I have said all of the things, and I think it would be really, really, really good for your perspective, because this has been hard.
Oh, it's work. It's definite work.
Yeah. And you haven't liked it.
No, I went through phases of absolute rejection, and then embracing, and rejection and embracing. It's that same ebb and flow of all the work that we do but with that, I can say, and I can only speak for myself here, that it's given me all these things, this trifecta of our work has given me the ability also to recognize when I am not my true self, and recognize when I'm making decisions out of fear, distrust,
lack of faith.
It's definitely allowed me to sit with that, and then in real time discern through others, other actions of other beings that really affect me or have the potential to affect me because they're triggering my PTSD response or my fear response or my rejection or anything, and then allowing me to discern through that to realize, like, I'm me, I'm doing the best I can, I'm communicating in the most compassionate way I can, and it's their shit.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means, and I still have to do the work, on a daily basis. But it's been really phenomenal. My point in this, too, you spoke to this a little bit a while ago, is we have a hard time kind of picking this stuff up, and I want to touch on men. I'm a man, and I really recognize how difficult it is for me. It was difficult for me to pick this up, and then I've been able to notice our male clients.
They fight it. We.
It's not a they or an I. It's a we.
Yeah.
We fight this work tooth and nail. And so as you were talking, I'm thinking, why? Why do we fight this so much? And on my scroll, on my feed, on my algorithm of the world right now, it's a lot of 5D, in the mind, escape the body, a lot of talk of just not being connected, right? And then so when you think about that in the fight or flight, or in the hunter-gatherer, right? I go back to the hunter-gatherer, and you see the bear's going to get you. Your mind, is rapidly computing what you need to do to survive, right? And I think we're hyper-focused on that instead of hyper-focusing on, the polyvagal connection to the body, where your mind is a supercomputer and your body is too. And they're in this like harmonious relationship of
or they can be.
Can be this harmonious relationship of chemical cascades that allow us to do and be in this space. And I think it's like failing to connect those two, of only recognizing the 5D mind, and that's your communicator, because that's the voice that you can hear without the vibrations, you know. But it's talking to this vehicle, because the body is the vehicle that's allowing us to like cruise around, right? So it's recognizing both of those, and then sitting with both of those of how the thought that's coming, and then how that's making me feel, and why that's making me feel that way. It's so hard. It's so hard for me. It was very difficult for me to recognize that and to pick that up. I just wanted to talk about that, because it's a big thing with men. Of, we're up here, we are not in the body. And it's getting there, poco poco, like little by little. You have breath work, you have meditation, you have these things that are slowly bringing us back in, but the conversation is still not there by any means.
Well, and what I've discovered is that a lot of these things, yoga practices, breath work, ice bathing, all of the sort of entheogenics, you know, we talk about the need for integration and the need for these body processing work because of bypassing and entheogenics, but even just someone going from chronic pain to healed via CBD, like anytime there's this, like, I don't know, tool being used, if it's not done through this body, the body work, the breath work, even though it's a body practice, it's more like you're doing it disassociated. And so it can cause some real ongoing disassociative yoga, meditation, guru kind of people, because you can go through the motions. You can know how to do yoga. You can know how to meditate. But if you are doing those things and not really, you're knowing how to do them here and you're putting your body through those motions, but you're not actually like doing this other kind of work, or you're doing them from a fear base, because you're afraid to die, or you're afraid to look a specific way, or you're, you know, all of that, then it's creating a lot of, your body is continuing to say, you're not listening to me. So you'll continue to have chronic pain. You'll continue to have mental, emotional, you know, bypassed kind of things that go on.
One of my biggest, what is it? A goal that I reached. Not even a goal that I reached. A place that I landed that I knew I was on the right track was, you know, you're speaking of this, like the body aches and pains, lower back, upper, you know, my middle back was just horrendous, you know. And then once I do the deep dive in the body work and these things, it's really connected to self-sabotage, you know. And
we did a session.
Yeah, we did a session.
So it's like, I think it's important, not important, I think it's, you're my hardest person to guide in body diva work. It's like you're a challenge, but I've also, like, I almost have given up on working with you because you're so frustrating, right? Because like part of the body diva work as a guide is and regulation is that spiritually and energetically, I can actually read other people's body and energy and what's coming up and knowingness, and I can see past life energy and stuck child energy, and I basically get like what's called intuitive or download or highly sensitive, and so I can know for my client what's happening. I also know that if I tell them, it doesn't matter. It's not going to help them.
Yeah, no, they have to
realize it through their body on their own. And so when I work with you, sometimes I fucking know. And what's funny is, you know, and you then don't want to know, and you don't want to go there, and you will sabotage the session to just like be
Well,
done.
I've
So
notoriously been
yeah.
a self-sabotager.
Yeah. So we did this session and we got to this lower back and we realized it was this self-sabotaging situation.
Yeah.
And I did see though that was a huge shift in your willingness.
Yeah.
You
Well, after that session, like, it was almost instantaneous where that area that was in discomfort didn't hurt anymore. And it really made me sit with, well, why is that? And then it's like an energetic release of, stuck traumas that are there that you're recognizing and then dealing with, And that was the aha moment. One of the aha moments for me personally was, wow, this thing is like a whole thing.
Yeah, it is. It's a whole thing. I want more people to feel safe enough to do this.
It's tough though. So it is tough because then you have to start recognizing a whole lot of shit that a lot of people aren't ready to start recognizing.
I had a client when I suggested we were doing a Body Deva session and stuff that was coming up, they were still really, really stuck in some serious, like, childlike activated responses, and I highly suggested that they look at nonviolent communication. And her response was, well, like, if it's been around since forever and everybody knows about it and it has this good reputation, why isn't it better known? And my response to that was that if you truly embraced the tenets and the essential philosophies of nonviolent communication, you would realize how fundamentally we needed to alter as a human species in how we act and relate to other people. That needs and feelings and respect of giving someone a choice becomes, like, just really, like, when you get down to it, if you really look at what Marshall Rosenberg is espousing, it is like that sort of utopian way we need to be and should be. And I just think that I realize how difficult and how far from that we are as a global society. And so the idea, once you see what it is, it can be pretty kind of dark night of the soul. All of this work, regulation, Body Deva, nonviolent communication, can be really dark night of the soul because you can kind of realize how far off humanity is.
Totally. And
go,
that can stir you up quite a bit.
Yeah. To the point, I want to circle back to what you said and kind of maybe like flesh that out a little bit with where a lot of your scrolling is and a lot of men that we interact with are now, and then women to some degree, in this idea of like 5D, of escaping the current reality, of escaping Earth via Mars. And I do think that there's a lot of unhealed masculine style energy of escapism, fear of how to deal with our current global world, situation and world, that I think that's why when I look at like every single thing that I do every day, am I contributing to a real and tangible, my little part of helping undo or create an alternative to shift to? And why I feel so okay with who I am in the situation of this work, the Body Deva work, is because I see that as you go into your body, you connect to nature because you are connecting to the natureness of yourself, and that is connecting you to the natureness of the 3D reality and to Earth, and you are connecting to that oneness. You're connecting to that wholeness. You're realizing we are not separate. That there is no.
We're part of a source.
We are nature. So coming into our body is helping us come into this body, and is helping us do the things that we need to do for her, which is for us. And so I just wanted to really like come back to what you said about that. And for me, I have a lot of, when I look at what holds me back, a lot of what holds me back is that I don't have confidence in myself because of a variety of gaslighting from forever. As a highly sensitive, neuroatypical person, that's probably what you would call, gifted on some level, of which most people are, but they've just been had it beaten out of them.
Pigeonholed,
One of my things that I'm really trying to work on is how I become activated by others that allow me to question what I know here. And what you said a little while ago about seeing how other people are reacting and acting and are activated from feeling of being unsafe and from past issues and whatever. It's been really, really helpful in this new age healing world that I'm navigating as what I do for a living, what puts food on our table, to be confident in what I do, because I am met regularly when I am trying to community build and create a relational and supportive peer environment for myself and for developing my craft, and for my clients, for working with people in areas that I don't have an expertise in. And I am met so regularly with people that are not in their bodies and are super bypassed, but are telling me a whole lot of stuff about what I need to know and how I need to be, and a lot of like stuff I've experienced forever as a petite female of like, oh, how cute.
How cute.
And it really has it is an area I'm working on of it sends me off the rails of my confidence and my power. It disempowers me.
It disempowers you.
And so I have really been working on that aspect now of, instead of going, oh, I feel activated, I need to do my own work, I need to take a moment, take a breath, use that intuitive nature that I have of the other person, and really discern through where they're at in their body. And I can actually then, like, oracally and energetically and just through mannerisms very quickly sense where another person is. And so I can take their feedback that they're giving me, their way they're responding, and how they're trying to essentially move me, sometimes without choice, in a much less sort of gaslighting feeling like I'm being disempowered. And I can stay in my power. I can stay in my compassion. I can know that I don't need to fix or put on to that person, but I can simply say essentially like, thank you, and exit the situation in a way where I don't lose pieces of my energy or become activated into feeling out of my power.
Real-time discernment is key, fundamental to all of these things, and it's a beautiful thing to be able to do.
Yeah. What else haven't we covered with the HETA process?
I think we've covered the
trifecta
of the work that we do.
Yeah.
Do you have any classes coming up? Because all this is really cool stuff.
Right.
And like, I like learning more.
Yeah.
Do you have anything coming that's
so
a class available to anybody?
So I do one-on-one Body Deva sessions. I'm certified. I'm proudly certified to do the one-on-one Body Deva sessions. And then I fold in the HETA approach to those Body Deva sessions now.
Yeah.
However, I do have a class coming up that is geared towards introducing these three components and reading the sort of foundational intro aspects of these three. And it is 6 classes over 12 weeks, every other week. So that there's, and the classes are 2 hours, and they're online, and they're via Zoom. And I'm shooting for Wednesday evenings, kind of central time-ish. However, as people are communicating, you know, it's really hard as adults to figure out what a class course time and schedule is. Yeah. So I think that I am going to continue to try to shoot for that, but I'm really open to people's needs and actually not defining it and saying, this is what it looks like, make it or break it, but more opening up to, I'm super interested in this, these are my needs, collecting those scheduling needs, and then seeing if we can organize that course around something that fits better everyone. I had hoped to do it, you know, on Wednesday nights every other week starting in October, and I'm realizing that it's not the money, which is super cheap, $120 for this offering. It's really people's schedule. I have a bunch of people super interested, and it's like their schedule.
Yeah, totally.
So I would be more interested in utilizing this podcast, this episode, to ask people to reach out to me and say, yes, I want to do an intro course and go through 3 of these books, each in these areas, and do some of these practices in each of these areas, and kind of get that aha moment that I've gotten to have. And this is kind of how I want it to look, and see if I can find a group of 6 to 12 people that all kind of have a similar schedule.
I think that's doable.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I'd love to offer it in person here. I think I'm going to continue to work on in person. I'm not a fully online person. I prefer personally in-person Body Deva sessions. I prefer in-person coursework. I prefer touching.
Yeah, totally.
That's me.
But we are in Mexico.
But we are in Mexico, and there's a whole lot of people that are not in Mexico, and so I continue to try to balance as the Libra. We're in Libra season. The online offerings with the in-person offerings. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, maybe we could link in the comments or description calendar work or something that makes it a little easier for
I'll do that.
Folks to connect to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe that's an idea.
Cool.
Well,
I think we're done.
Should we call it on that?
Yeah.
And
Thank you for letting me have a monologue episode. But your contributions, I really appreciate that you were willing to share the things about it that you were, because I know that you've had a very, like, on again, off again relationship.
Well, it's with any relationship. There is ups and downs.
Yep.
And this is my lighter today. I just wanted to.
We lost our one lighter.
No, it's tough. It's a tough thing, and I think in marriage, in continuing to work on this relationship, there's definite walls you put up, and then mental blockages that you don't want to do, and you don't want your wife to be right.
Well, but in your defense, my neuroatypicality and the way in which I become, and my OCD and my your ADHD and all of the labels and everything, I become like a dog on a bone, right? And so I really like,
and I have a trouble with authority,
and you have a trouble with authority. So the combination creates like a really, really interesting dynamic for us sometimes. So I have to work on how to make requests and not demand. And then I have to work on the pace with which I want to transform. And and I need to be more and more aware of that co-regulation component of, like, this is not the time, Abby. Like, this is not the time. This is the time for co-regulation. This is not the time for body deva work. And so that's been part of what I've really had to do is that kind of aspect with you and the kids is
and I've had to
take
do
my own medicine
my
now.
own work of recognizing my disdain for authority, because the authority in this world is a lot different than your authority in saying, like, hey, this is a really great tool I've been using. I think it'll help you.
Because you kind of saw Mary as this authoritarian figure.
I saw Mary as another guru. Preaching some shit.
Yeah.
But
she's not.
She's not totally. That I understood, but I didn't understand. And it was a new concept, you know. And like me, I have my own thoughts about all this too. So it was just a different situation of. It really took me some time to recognize the pros and the cons, and then to be able to discern through that, and to pick up what I wanted, and to just let go of what I don't want.
And that's it. So I see new people practicing polyvagal that are all of a sudden tearing Deb Dana apart the way, you know, as you know, and Marshall Rosenberg. I don't see it as much, but you know, there's a lot of pushback with his work because people think that his work comes across as very arrogant sometimes, and that's because he embodied it so much that he could just do it and say it so quickly that it was obnoxious.
Yeah, it was.
It is obnoxious how easy he can. And he's passed, but how easy he can do it. And so I think that that's the important thing about this is, for me personally, I feel really good about the HETA, you know, methodology. And I know that I'm not done. I know that I'm not going to become a HETA guru that spends the next 20 years preaching this trifecta and whatever, because Mary is a different practitioner now than she was when she wrote the Body Deva book. So I see that when I take her classes, and I see how she is evolving, and Deb Dana's books are evolving, and
well, that's the
and
point,
so it's
though.
the
I
point.
think that's the whole point of you. You've built this pyramid. Now you have this trifecta, and you can always build on that and make a bigger and better pyramid.
Right.
You know. And so, it's not getting stuck. I think that's the whole point of all this, is not getting stuck in this.
One person,
one thing, one
thing,
thought, one thing. It's continuing to evolve and to build upon the space that you've created. Because the base you've created is phenomenal. Yeah. And like what I've seen, you know, as your partner, who is your biggest cheerleader and your biggest critiquer, is I'm impressed, you know. And it's like what I've seen you and us do with clients, and allowed them or been part of their big changes and given them the tools to change in the capacity that they want to, is like phenomenal. Because that's the whole point, is you know, we can fix ourselves and then maybe try to fix, you know, our community, our people around us. And it's like these tools all together in unison is absolutely magic. Yeah. You know, and I agreed with it all. And but you know, one of the best parts of this is the nonviolent communication, because it is new to us. Yeah. We, as a society, have not embraced this, and who knows how long? Who I cannot say, but I know it was definitely not in any of our repertoires. Yeah. Up until right now. Yeah. So. And it should be taught. It should be like math and science, and it should be a class from the moment. As humans, as compassionate lovers of the cosmos, it should be our foundation. Yeah. Because if that's our foundation, then it's all, you know. Anyways, I love you. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. It was a great talk. You hold that. Is it still going? Are you out? My joint's out. Your joint's out. Always.
I can't smoke fast enough. It always goes out. I can't.
You're doing great.